Everyone wants to live an inspired life, yet so many people search for happiness following the footsteps of peers and taking advice from people who have different values and outcomes to which they're searching. There are people born into wealth, graduated from the best universities in the world, and there are people who have none of that and yet are living extraordinary lives full of fulfillment and reward. The purpose of this podcast is to share insights and strategies that allow you to question the status quo and think freely, so you can design your life and be who you want to be. We get one life. Time is our most valuable asset. I believe that when we're free and able to focus on meaningful work, we become better human beings. This is always free, and I'm your host, Jason Graystone.
Welcome to the leading podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with Jason on social media and subscribe to the Jason Graystone YouTube channel for weekly videos. Don't forget to also subscribe to the weekly newsletter to receive frequent educational content and action steps to help you design your life so you can be who you want to be. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.
Well, welcome back to the podcast, guys. I hope you all had a nice week so far. If this is the first time you're listening, this is the number one podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. And if this is the first episode you've ever listened to, stop here and go back to episode one. And you're going to get the most out of it. Trust me, you can come back to this episode, and I promise you, if you like it and you like the first 10 episodes, you're going to get back to 83. Because people who start listening at episode 1 usually stay the course. And you're going to get most from it from doing that. So feel free to listen to this episode, of course, but I would highly recommend you go back to episode 1 after this one. This one is going to be, I want to talk a little bit about trading, your approach to trading, but I also want to talk about people in general and that approach and the expectations and the kind of mindset they have when it comes to perfection, the right way of doing things, idealisms, what they feel things should be like, and really just what I've witnessed in the media lately and kind of on social media and all the rest of it. Because obviously we're seeing a lot of people voice opinions now. We're seeing lots of kind of movements that are taking place, and obviously with access to tons and tons of information, the internet, things are being highlighted, things are being exaggerated, things are really being information is being spread at a very, very rapid pace, and that can have benefits and it can have drawbacks as well, because benefits is obviously we're becoming more aware, more conscious, we're able to download vast information into our brain, but also our brain can only process information at a certain rate, and sometimes what that can do is cause conspiracy theories and hearsay and just opinions that are sparked off of nothing other than a sentence in a tweet. And because we haven't taken the time to process it and synthesize it and look at the paradox of the information and the pros and cons of the information, our brain can't process it as quick as we can read it and hear it. So we just kind of we accept certain things. And that can be dangerous, right? It can lead to, one of the things this podcast is about is empowerment, and you get that from forming your own opinion. If you don't form your own opinion, I've spoke about it before, you end up getting on the property ladder when you realize that you probably should wait to do that if depending on your agenda, right? Depending on your objective in life, or go and save 10% of your income, and that's all you should do. Well, that's going to give you 4 years income at the end of 40 years of saving. That's not the full picture. So questioning things is vital for empowerment and making decisions aligned with your values. Well, if you're receiving so much information that you can't possibly synthesize, so you're just overwhelmed with people's opinions, some of it you're just going to accept. And that is where we find ourselves in, accepting these little facts on social media. And you see kids doing it, and you see kids basically forming they're not listening at school. What they're doing is just learning everything from TikTok, which is a very, very dangerous thing to do. And whenever there's a movement or people bring up a certain, I don't know, just something comes up in the news, what happens is you find all of these old historic articles and phrases and sayings that get brought to the forefront. And obviously everyone who didn't know about those articles or sayings or anything like that originally, they just think it's new news. So they think it just fuels the fire, when in actual fact it's been around for a long time. But the thing is this, this is going to be relevant to learning to trade and learning to invest and managing your money. But the thing is this, I've spoke about this many times on this podcast, but it's about appreciating the both sides. It's about appreciating the perceived good and the perceived bad. And I've said it before, if it wasn't for the night time, you wouldn't appreciate the daytime. If everyone was just happy all the time and there was no people going against your values, because I'm not, which is obviously called bad, right? Then you wouldn't grow as a person. You wouldn't appreciate the good in your life. And without people challenging your values, you wouldn't be able to appreciate the other side. And you wouldn't feel good when you commit acts of kindness towards your values. Because if there was no bad, you wouldn't feel kind. If there was no kindness, you wouldn't feel bad. And I kind of gave the analogy earlier this week that if someone was addicted to violence and they love violence and they went and killed everyone on the planet, well, they'll have peace. And just the same way as when there's peace protests and things like that, people get together and then eventually it causes violence. And that's called the law of heuristic escalation, where you push hard and you take a stance on one side and you try and promote more of one side. You will, by definition of law of heuristic escalation, create the other side and more of the other side, because the universe is completely at balance and everything's trying to balance you out. So it's much wiser to just appreciate what's happening and what is there challenging you and what's not challenging you. Otherwise, you can't appreciate who you are. And this is evident everywhere. I mean, there's accepting that 50% of the people just won't like you or won't like your values. That's a much wiser play, just accepting that, than trying to push against it. Because, look, there's people who are vegan and they love animals and they never hurt animals, and then there's people who go fox hunting, right? And to that person, a fox hunter is an a-hole, right? But to a fox hunter, they're friends. It's not an a-hole. So you have to understand there are people who are like each other, they have similar values, and there are people who have other similar values, but trying to fight against them just because of your values, I think it's crazy. It's crazy. Now, yeah, having your voice heard and what you stand for and raising your value system and how you think the planet should be or the world should be, that's a great thing. But it's much, it's not a wise play to expect someone to have the same opinions and views as you, right? So where does this come into trading? Well, look, we just had there is a certain way and order in which you should you open your mind and you earn rights to risk. Okay, we just had Mother's Day this week, and just to give you an example on what I was just talking about, I don't really get on with my mum. I'd never speak to my mum. And growing up, she was very, very prudish to talk to. I couldn't talk to her about emotions. I couldn't talk to her about sex. I wouldn't cry in front of her or anything like that. And I don't talk to her. So on Mother's Day, I don't send her a message or anything like that, which I just don't. I don't feel that way. I'm not that connected to my mum, but it doesn't mean. I mean, some people have that situation, and what they do is they go, "Oh, why does my mum treat me that way? My mum's not a good person. How could you not do this with your son? Do that with your son?" Well, actually, I appreciate her for being that way, because if she wasn't that way, would I be as comfortable in my own company? Would I be as self-sufficient? Would I be happy in my own skin? Would I be dedicated to helping other people empower their lives? Would I be the parent that I am today? Would I be, providing the security that I've got at the moment? Would I be driven enough to control my finances if it wasn't for that? So I believe that a lot of it was to do with that, and therefore I'm thankful, but it's because I understand the different value systems, and I understand that she had different values growing up, and then her parents set her values, and her childhood set her values, and it's not about just judging and saying you're a bad person because you're not this way, which is my values. It's about understanding that they are there to serve you in another way, and everything is there to serve you in another way. So when it comes to trading, what happened this week was there was a friend of mine, not a friend of mine, but I've kind of exchanged messages with them in the past, and they rang me up and they were scammed by one of the fake accounts pretending to be me. And they said they took £550. I paid them in Bitcoin, and they took the money, and I thought it was you. And they kind of perceive that as a bad thing. And whilst, yes, the people doing that are up to, it's not, the people trying to scam people out of money it's not sustainable, okay? It's not wise. It's a lower level thought process to go against other humans, destroy it. It's self-destruction, right? Because there's only so many people you can scam. You will run out of population on the planet, and it's not sustainable. Whereas if you're recommended by someone and you're providing a true service to someone, they're going to recommend you, and you'll grow, and you'll get recommended to everyone on the planet until they have kids, and they'll recommend you to their kids, and so on and so on and so on. And that's evolutionary. Whereas doing something that is to the detriment of human beings it's going to have that entropy element to it, where it decays over time and you can't serve any more people. But they are there to serve a purpose. They are serving a purpose, because if it wasn't for those scammers, we wouldn't be as cautious as we are. And in the news this week, it's been very much around, we should feel safe when we leave our house and all the rest of it. But look, if everyone was really, really safe and it was nice and fluff, you're never going to have that environment. And if we did, what would it be like? I mean, how would we be? Would we be so vulnerable and stupid? Would we get duped more? How would we be as humans if everything we felt was safe and we had no senses about us, no wits about us in certain situations? What will happen is we will naturally breed the other side. People will start taking advantage again. So if everything was happy, if we were in complete happiness all the time, we would crave sadness. We would crave sadness. People who think they want to sit on a beach drinking cocktails in the 30-degree heat, they sit there for a week, and then after the 7th day, 8th day, they're itching for some cloud, itching for some rain, itching for something to, change up the status quo of sitting there in their happy state, quote unquote. So anyway, going back to this story, the guy, I said to the guy, I'm sorry that happened to you. And he said, well, no, look, it's, it made me cautious. It made me wonder. I'm glad it was only £550. It's money that it's not going to ruin my life. It's not going to put me in financial difficulty too much, but it's an eye-opener. And that is it, an eye-opener. It just by having that there has made him more cautious, more aware. And guess what? He went out, He launched a new product in his business. This is what motivated him to launch a product in his business to replace that money. That product is now doing phenomenally well. He's now going about managing his money much more sensibly. And that's one example. The other example is when people go into trading and they just lose money trading. And they say, oh yeah, I was trading badly, I lost money. Well, losing money trading will be a benefit in the long run. It will be something that teaches you. And if you've lost £1,000, well, how much has that earned you in the long run? Because if you're going to persevere with trading or investing and you've lost some money, well, how much has that earned you in the long run? It isn't really a loss. It isn't really a loss. And if it was due to some poor information that you got, or you copied someone's trade, or you done some signal service, that signal service, although you might have perceived it to be a good thing when you got in with it and then a bad thing when you lost money, well, guess what? It's just a thing. It's just a thing that is allowing you to take information and use that information to guide you towards what's right for you. And that is really all anything does in the world. And that's what everything is here to do. Everything is here to guide you to be more of who you want to be and what you feels right for you. But it's not right for everyone. All right. So, I mean, the purpose of this podcast, this episode really was just opening eyes to right and wrong, I guess, when it comes to just what's right and wrong in your mind, but how that influences decisions. And the truth is this: only certain people will ever be able to trade the markets. Only certain people will ever be able to play, Major League Basketball, because you have to be 6 foot, 7 foot, or whatever it is. Certain people who want to learn to trade have to have a higher IQ. And some people just haven't got what it takes. They can't think logically. They can't handle abstraction and adaptive concepts and logic. They just can't do that. So they won't be a trader. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong or right or they're a bad person. It just means that it's not right for them right now. And when I say right now, by the way, the more you empower yourself, the more you are living on purpose, and the more that you have your cash cushions behind you and you've taken care of that animal brain and those survival instincts are taken care of with a cash buffer, your IQ will actually grow. So you can actually earn, although you might not be able to trade right now, if you build wealth the right way, you earn your right to risk because you unlock parts of your brain that can deal with more and more complexity. And if you don't believe me, there was research done on 464 farmers across 54 villages in southern India, and they monitored their IQ. And before the harvest, when the money was tight, the crop was down, their IQ dropped to 13 or 14 points. And during the busy season, when it was booming and they had prosperity and poverty had gone away, their IQ raised up by a staggering 50 points. So when we are out of that animal thinking, that animal brain, we can actually raise our IQ and we can handle more and more complexity. So that's why I teach this in order of the way I teach it, because I want people to succeed, and you have a higher chance of success when you build wealth the right way. And more importantly, you get to keep it. So this is a long process. I mean, human evolution, we've been around for about 200,000 years just to get to this point, and now we're expanding our mind even more. And maybe in another 200,000 years, we will be at this place where we're just in a state of being, and we just understand everything, and we're so, woke, as they call it, but we're so spiritual. But that's a long way off. This is a long process. And the way you're going to expand your awareness and consciousness and raise up in terms of evolution is to just accept that everyone has different values. Everyone's here to serve their own purpose. And everything's there to help you, guide you into more of who you would love to be. And the more you try and push against it, the more you try and push against other people's value systems, you will naturally create more. So that's really it for the podcast this week. I just really wanted to get that off my chest, without actually specifically naming certain topics or areas or points that are being brought up. I just wanted to kind of give you a general overview of my thoughts on situations and how that applies to managing money as well. If you think something's bad, if you've lost some money, well, there's some good in it as well, trust me. There's never one side. So that is it for this week, guys. I hope you've had a good week so far. If you want to go back and listen to episode 1, I highly recommend you do. And next week I'll be back with another episode. Until then, take care, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you then.
Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.